How's it going, North Memphis? Efren here, coming at you from North McLean, between Jackson and Tutwiler. Just a stone's throw from the Valentine Evergreen line. Today we got like 1,940 cases in Shelby County of the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus. The deaths stated 41 since yesterday. Very fortunate about that. That's very good news. Also very good news that the increase from the prior day has been only 37 cases and marks the 6th straight day of cases rising less than 50, which is a departure from the recent past. We have to keep it up because this represents stage 3 of 5 in the progression of the bell curve, let's say. I'll explain that later, maybe not now, but in the next episode perhaps, maybe now. But obviously we're making progress in the fight to starve the virus of potential hosts. That's the purpose of all this. But we have more work left to do. And it may or may not involve opening up. I will tell you, if we do not open up soon, that we will control this thing sooner. But anyway, about the Tigers, huh? So far the Tigers have 3 new faces coming in to the basketball team. You got that guy Landers, who's the number 2 transfer prospect from Virginia Tech. So he's coming on board. That's cool. We're kind of stacked to the wing though. Don't have a real big guy to replace the couple guys we lost this year. We got one other grad transfer, Ahmad Rand, and another one, a preferred walk-on, who's going to be coming in as a freshman from Chicago, who seemed to have some okay statistics at a very high, highly regarded school out of Chicago. So that's encouraging. We didn't need that many because we have so many people that are staying from a large class the prior year. So the Tigers should improve. Now, one note on that: if we are to have basketball, if we are to have college basketball this year, it's not going to be, I very seriously doubt it's going to be where we'll have a full FedEx Forum full of fans. Something has to change. It's like restaurants that only serve takeout, or bars that only serve takeout liquor. Something has to change. Obviously, in order to contain the spread, yet reopen businesses, adjustments have to be made in order to maintain the social distancing that starves this virus. To the retail locations, as well as athletic events. You're not going to have 18,100 people in the FedEx Forum for a home basketball game. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous to think so. So they'll figure out something. The NBA's figuring out something to actually start with the playoffs. I believe start with the playoffs. They're they had a lead on the rest of the society because they were the first ones to close shop back in early March, succeeded by the NCAA, which canceled the Final Four this year. Well, the whole March Madness actually. But so anyway, between you and me, you're not going to get the breadth of subject matter with respect to history and politics and sports and current affairs, world affairs. You're not going to get that distilled into life in Memphis as well as you're going to be with me. I'll put it to you. And if you don't believe me, keep listening from here and everybody else. From here and all the episode. Why? Well, my interests are broad. And I'll share my knowledge with you, if you care. So, there has been a society here on the 4th Chickasaw Bluff, even before Jackson, Overton, and Winchester came over to found this place, engaged in a real estate project, basically, in the very early 19th century. I would say there have been several notable positive and negative upheavals throughout the history and prehistory of people in this immediate area. The first of which was the encounter between Hernando de Soto and the Mississippians, mostly the Tunica and the Chickasaw peoples who populated this area. And unfortunately, that was met with a pandemic, a super pandemic that led to over 90% population loss because of the smallpox that my ancestors brought over. The Spanish, in this case the Spanish conquistadors. So all the little villages like Chucalissa, but many others, crowded up and down the Mississippi, were eliminated, and they were forced to bury their dead in the mounds. So many of the mounds are actually burial sites dated to the 1540s, as in De Soto's expedition. So we have a bridge after him. That's another thing. That's odd. Fast forwarding about 300 years after then, we have cotton becoming a super priced commodity, fueling the Industrial Revolution in the Great Britain. So they have all those textile mills across the pond, and 75% of the world's supply is the American South. How to get it from the fields to the Mississippi, where it goes down to New Orleans by steamship? You bring it to Memphis. Memphis exploded in population in the decades leading up to the Civil War because of this amazing increase in commerce. Unfortunately, a lot of it also in human beings, which is why we have Auction Avenue. On another note, about 10 years prior, we had the crossing of the Trail of Tears over the Mississippi from Memphis over to Marktree, Arkansas. So anyway, that was a population explosion where population increased in this city so fast that it increased our will or capacity to build sanitary infrastructure. So about 10 years or so after the Civil War ended, in the 1870s, we had yellow fever. Y'all know it. We were a one of the leading metropolises in the country because of our geostrategic position, and we lost all that as such because of the pestilence, blamed on the swamp gas or whatever, the miasma coming up from the marshes surrounding the city, feeding into the Mississippi. But it was the yellow fever germ carried on by the rats brought over on the ships, and everybody was throwing their poop out on the street because there was no proper sanitation to take care of this booming population. And so it got the infected fleas gathered on there from the rats and bit all of us, and we lost half of the population in the 1870s. This trend reversed itself between the 30s and 50s in the Great Migration. Well, what happened there? Mr. Massey and Mr. Ferguson did what? They invented mechanized cotton picking. The big old tractor that was outfitted with an implement to harvest cotton in a hurry. Kind of like a second Eli Whitney. And so the sharecropping industry, where poor blacks and poor whites alike got to retain a share of the cotton that they were able to pick by their own hands on sublet land, was eliminated. People were no longer able to make a living out in the field, literally. Which, interestingly enough, echoes what happened after NAFTA, and Mexicans were no longer able to make a living in the field because of land concentration, which is what we got in the 90s, a whole bunch of people moving over here to make a living. So this great migration brought a lot of people out from places like Tunica, Mississippi, Holly Springs, Brownsville, Collierville, Nutbush, not Nutbush's neighborhood, but Nutbush, where what's her face, Tina Turner's from, Amory, Tupelo, and they came to places like Memphis and filled west where we got Leahy's trailer park from, out on Summer. Huge expanse of a trailer parking facility that's no longer there, actually. And but a lot of people moved further away to places like St. Louis and Chicago, Detroit, for factory jobs. Well, we had some here in town, but a lot of them moved further away. I mean, if you're going to move, get out of the South. Why not, if you're African American especially? So this was a great migration, where it concerned, I guess, especially, and oh, by the way, and it's why you see places like downtown Tunica, downtown Hernando, downtown Brownsville, downtown Somerville, all these county seats. The town squares are all frozen in time. They're all frozen in the 50s. But this is important. It's one reason why the fracture, why the college football um, fan uh, fan affiliation is so fractured here in Memphis. You have a lot of people whose grandmas, grandpas, great grandpas, great grandpas, great grandmas, great grandpas were actually bandwagon fans of Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and so they have that legacy in the family. And they may never have been to any of these places to college, or been to any of these cities anyway, or towns where these colleges are. But that's the legacy. That's how the that's how a lot of people ended up continuing to cheer for Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Tennessee, I guess, because their great grandparents, grandparents, parents, from when they were picking cotton as sharecroppers, like Elvis's parents, were before they moved over here, which I think was the reason why they moved here. Um, why they, how they were able to, why they're fans as they are without being alums of the university. But interesting, dynamic what we have here, all these balkanization of fans. But anyhow, we have connections to the countryside. Well, not me personally. My connections are to a city in northern Mexico where there's a underutilized steel mill that was privatized. They used to be a parastate organization. But anyhow, the point is that Governor Lee of Tennessee is authorizing the reopening of a lot of businesses in the state of Tennessee. Mississippi was always late to the party with respect to, social distancing, as was Arkansas. I think they still don't have closures over in Arkansas, which is mind-boggling, and they come here all, over that bridge every day. The most extreme cases are what happened in Georgia and Florida, where, you open the freaking beaches, first of all in Florida, which were the source of a tremendous spread over spring break anyway. What happens when you open up and people go out there in large numbers? Oh, and predictably the cases spiked. Georgia is about to open up. And that's just going to be a tremendous shit show. The virus is transmitting very, very fast in Georgia. So fast, I think that they're probably going to, I imagine a lot of people go to escape places surrounding Atlanta. Because Atlanta, I think, is still shut down itself, the city itself, but because most people who live in Atlanta, in the area, live outside of the city. So they're going to be opened up just like the brilliant citizen of the world, not really, Governor Kemp is. It's going to get so bad, I believe, in Georgia, unfortunately, people, like it did in New York, that people are going to leave and take it with them. So, a lot of places in Tennessee, outside of Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, haven't reached the upward slope of the curve yet, simply because there is lower population concentration and and the cases haven't started yet in large numbers. The bell curve is a function of the cases you had the day before, but at some point it still accelerates. And all it takes is a few, and an entire city can be devastated, or a small town. Note what happened in South Dakota. Note what happens in with that plant, with that meat processing plants, chicken processing plants all over Tennessee and Arkansas are experiencing the same thing. And unfortunately, because they're immigrant populations, immigrant workforces, what happens is that they get away with keeping them in operation, even though their workers are getting sick. I need to talk about that later. But unfortunately, because of the ties that establish the balkanized sports affiliations in Memphis, also put Memphis at risk or expose us to the sorrow of what is yet to occur in the countryside. Many of us still have aunts, uncles, grandpas, grandmas out there in the Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas outback. Way on yonder, And it will be and the problem is that these folks are going to be, it's going to be hard for them to find medical care because of brilliant Bill Lee, governor of Tennessee, for example, not accepting Medicare, Medicaid expansion money because it was Obama's idea, I guess. A lot of rural medical centers have had to close. So I fear that many people with connections to our city out that way are either going to come and get us infected, or at the very least themselves out there in the countryside drown in their own phlegm. Because that's how you die. You drown in your own phlegm because your lungs get super saturated, literally filled up with goo. So much so that the lungs lose their spongiform quality and become turgid. And that is filled up with fluid. Heavy smokers, the elderly, obese, diabetics, people with pneumonia, people with other respiratory illnesses are especially vulnerable to this, and it also exacerbates heart and kidney conditions. So I guess if you can't breathe out all your carbon dioxide efficiently, it's going to hit your kidneys, right? But what do I know? I'm not a physician. I just have them in my family. But anyway, kudos to Mayor Strickland for keeping it real until Cinco de Mayo. We hope all of us keep the pressure on and not let up or mess us up as the clock is winding down, and let the coronavirus get a lead in the last few seconds, because that's what we're trying to avoid. Want to win. We got to keep this full court press on the whole way. Talk to you later.